No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. Parking wise.
Okay. Welcome to a meeting of the Board of Education of Somerset Hills. Please be advised that this and all meetings of the board are open to the public and media consistent with the Open Public Meetings Act, and that advance notice required therein has been provided. This is a meeting of the Board of Education of Somerset Hills at which formal action may be taken. The public will have an opportunity to be heard as shown on the agenda. Roll call, please.
Mr. Baker?
Here.
Ms. Fowler?
Here.
Ms. Cooper?
Here.
Mrs. C. Grumfred?
Here.
Ms. Gills?
Here.
Mr. Joyce? Ms. Nathans? Mrs. Santoro? Mrs. Rye? And Mrs. Brenda?
Here. We're going into executive session. The Open Public Meetings Act authorizes a public body to exclude the public from that portion of the meeting at which specified topics are to be discussed under circumstances where the public consideration of such topics will clearly endanger the public, or where the personal privacy or guaranteed rights of individuals whose activities or affairs are to be discussed would clearly be in danger of unwarranted invasions, and the matters about to be presented for discussion clearly meet the circumstances test of such act. The Board of Education of Somerset Hills now adjourns its public session to reconvene an executive session for the purpose of discussing the following: personnel, student matters, contracts, negotiations, and litigations. Can I get a motion to go into executive, please? Mr. Baker, and second, Ms. Cooper. Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There it is. Okay. That was impeccable timing.
I'm here.
Okay. Well, then we are going to hand it over for Dr. Brochel for the report of the superintendent.
So we have our first group of students from the middle school and the high school that are serving as our representatives, representing their classmates. And our first group is from the middle school, they're representing the climate and culture team. We have had kickoffs before for our climate and culture team to speak to the board here. We had one last September, and they're back. They're doing beautiful work. And we have Amaya Ram and Clarissa Caggiano, who I met with the other day, and they are excited to be able to share with you all what is new at the middle school. So we'll have Clarissa and Amaya come on up, and they can begin. Ladies.
Good evening. My name is Amanda and I'm in 8th grade at Burnsville Middle School. This will be my 3rd year as a part of the Culture and Climate Team, a group at BMS that is in charge of planning and organizing events at school that are fun for students. Our first event this year was over the summer, when we welcomed newcomers at BMS with a breakfast in the cafeteria and followed that with a meeting discussing our plans for the year. At the breakfast, Culture and Climate students took turns to discuss different aspects that make BMS the great school it is, and to show them around to ensure they aren't completely lost on the first day. The breakfast also helps the new students meet some kids at school so they know that they will see some friendly faces in the hallway. As for upcoming plans, we have many ideas in the works and hope to make this year even better than previous ones by choosing events we know students will love based on data from prior years. One day that was extremely popular among students last year was Pi Day, in which the student with the most community service hours as of Pi Day in each grade pied a teacher in the face during their respective lunch periods. We hope to have another Pi Day celebration in March this year with some new additions that will make it even better than last year's, such as incorporating house points and fundraising. Some other ideas we have for this year include anything but a backpack day, hat days, house days, kickball tournaments, and movie days during the weeks of state testing. We hope that these events will drum up school spirit and motivate students to show their love for BMS. We will have our first house day this Thursday, September 26th, so make sure to remind your students to dress in their house colors. I'm looking forward to the start of another great year. I will now turn it over to Clarissa.
Thank you, Maya. My name is Clarissa Caggiano. I am in 7th grade. I am in Juke House. This summer, I went to assist the 5th graders set up their lockers. I went for 2 days. I earned some community service hours. All BMS students in grades 6 through 8 need to earn 10 hours a year. 5th graders start off with earning 5 hours of community service. For the 4 years of BMS, you need to complete 35 hours. BMS students can find out opportunities to get community service by announcements at school and the bulletin board at BMS. Mrs. Kimmel is in charge of the community service for students. At BMS, our community service follows the motto of the Travis Manning Foundation, which is, if not me, then who? Some ways to get community service is by doing the Hub Club, October, Rise and Shine Breakfast Bag Program, and Positively Me. We started our classes off this year by making a new thing called a social contract, which is where we make rules for ourselves. Some of the things on there are what we should be like to a teacher, how teachers should be like to us, how we should treat each other, and how we should act when handling conflict. Some common words are respect, kindness, listening, responsible, and calm. These contracts are a guide on how us students should behave and act in the classroom. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you, ladies. I want to share that I spent some time last spring with the Climate and Culture team as they worked through their student handbook, and it's probably one of the more impressive interactions that I've seen from kids in any district when it comes to developing some ownership in the functionality of their school. And to top it off, I actually have a signed, autographed copy of the handbook from the Climate and Culture team, which is pretty cool, and it's in my office, and I show people all the time. So some great things that are coming out of that team at the middle school. And our new speaker from the high school is Nora Jersak, and she's going to be spending the year with you all. Nora comes to us from Hillsborough. She's been at the high school for 2 years, and she's really immersed herself into all things Bernard's High, and we really are looking forward to learning from her this year. Nora.
Hello everybody, my name is Nora Jerzak and I am a senior at Bernard's High School, and I will be acting as the high school representative for the 2024 and 2025 school year. I'm very excited to get to know everybody and work with you all. Alright, to get started, students are very excited to be back in school and start their classes with peers. They are especially excited as we anticipate that the track will be done soon. They see red. If you go and look, there are big containers full of red paint, so that's what it is. And I can tell you, this morning actually, everyone looked out the window, very excited about it, getting painted. As the track is still under construction, it is not open to the public yet, and gym classes are being held on the grass in the lower fields. However, all sports teams are still able to practice on the turf, and all home football games have been held on the football field. Since school has started, there has been a little bit of an issue with the waiting time for lunch lines, since the school lunch provider is experiencing some staffing issues. However, Bernard staff is well aware, and Dr. Nigel and Dr. Burchell are working to get it resolved. One of our clubs, Pure Leaders, is up and running, and freshman orientation was very successful. I was at it, and I have to say, the freshman class this year are absolutely wonderful. The growth that we've seen from the end of last year before the summer to even them coming back this September, they've really matured, and they're really looking forward to get involved in extracurriculars, activities, sports, so that's really great to see. Tomorrow at Back to School Night, the Pure Leaders will also be there, and they will help parents and guardians find the classes and make sure that everything runs smoothly. And we are also helping with the pep rally. Another one of our clubs, the Crimson, which is our school newspaper, is working on putting a new issue out and getting more students involved. We're really excited about that. Bernard's Choir is currently fundraising for their trip to New Orleans, so that is super exciting. I believe they're selling baked goods. Our student council has been working diligently to plan the homecoming dance, which is on October 5th at 7 p.m. The theme is Masquerade, and so people can wear masks, we'll see. I can speak for myself and many of my peers when I say that we are very excited about it coming back this year. Student council has also been working hard on planning our pep rally, and there will be tons of games, activities, skits. I believe every single fall sport will be performing some kind of skit, so that should be interesting to see. Everyone will be wearing red, and so we have started to say, spread red. The seniors are very busy. Most, if not all, are applying early action or enrolling, and so far we've already had about 10 people commit to schools, which is super exciting. As far as sports go, it's been a very good season so far. It's still early, but I will go over the stats. Football so far is 4-0, and they are the front leaders in the conference. Boys soccer is 4-2. Girls soccer is 6-1. Field hockey is 3-1. There was a cross-country meet today. So far, they are undefeated, and we've had 2 students break BHS records at Navarar, which is super exciting. Girls tennis is 6-3, volleyball is 5-5, and there is a county tennis championship this weekend at Pingree, and our team will be playing there. So very exciting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nora. Next item on our presentation tonight is the New Jersey Student Learning Assessment presentation from the 2024 results. And we have Dr. Edgerton that is here with Ms. Barna and Mr. Patelli, and they are going to lead the presentation tonight.
Hello everyone, we are back. So we are back with this year annual report to the board of the student assessment results of NJ's Law and other required statewide assessments. Assessments took place last spring. For each subject area, ELA, math and science, the data presented will include ELA results from grades 3 to 9, math results from grades 3 to 8, all students that took Algebra 1 course, grades 7 through 12, everyone, geometry students from grade 8 and 9, and Algebra 2 from grade 9. Science results will be represented by grades 5, 8, and 11, and those are grade band results. We will present analysis within each data set. We will talk about multi-year trends and subgroup performance, disaggregated and aggregated, and we will look at our observations on student learning and also highlight next steps. NJ's Law assessments, as you probably know, are administered in spring and are summative. These are federally required. The tests measure how well students learn grade level material and describe student mastery relative to meeting those grade level standards or course level standards in case of mathematics. And they assess both content and subject-related practices, science practices, math practices. In ELA and mathematics, there are 5 performance levels for NJ's Law assessments. Level 1, not yet meeting expectations. Level 2, partially meeting expectations. Level 3, approaching expectations. 4 is meeting, and 5 is exceeding expectations. As you know, levels 4 and 5 together constitute so-called passing levels. And these passing levels are something that we are going to look at. If students pass on the low grade levels with level 4 and 5, they consider to be on a good pathway to be college and career ready when they get to high school and they get to graduation. In science, it's a little bit different scale, and this has happened historically. Level 1, 2, 3, and 4, when 3 and 4 are similar to math and ELA 4 and 5, that will be described as proficient and advanced proficient level. Again, 3 and 4 considered to be passing. Level 2 is near proficiency, limited understanding of the standards, and level 1 is below proficiency. This particular state also federally required. As I said before, it tests grade band knowledge. In grade 5, these are grades 3, 4, and 5. In grade 8, those are materials from courses in grade 6, 7, and 8. And in grade 11, it's high school courses, grades 9, 10, and 11. The test is quite complicated. LSAT describes student mastery, meeting grade level band grade band level standards, and again, we're talking about content and multiple practices. Different practices such as analyzing data, constructing arguments, science practices, engineering practices, and so on. And here's a snapshot of our results. This year, altogether, district-wide passing rate for ELA was calculated at 71.9%, with the state being at 52.2%. Mathematics went to 59.9%, very close to 60%, with the state being at 39.5%, and the science was at 40.5%, with the state being at 24% passing rate. We'll talk in details about all these numbers, and at this point, I'll ask Lindsay to talk about ELA results in detail.
Thank you, Olga. Okay, for English language arts, our first chart here, just to orient you, because then many of the slides will look the same from here on out. We typically have the grade going down the left side, so you see the grades from 3 to 9, and then going across, that's usually where we'll have our comparisons that we're highlighting for you on each slide. So here we banded proficiency levels, level 4 and 5, which is proficient, which is passing. Level 3, which is approaching proficiency. Then we have the level 1 and 2, which is not meeting. And alongside our SHSD percentages at each of these levels, you'll see where the state fell. So we really like to hone in really on all of the numbers, but our eyes first go to our level 4s and 5s, how many students in our schools are passing the NJSLA in ELA. And something I see when I'm looking at this data that makes me really excited is the more time our students are in our schools as they move from 3rd to 4th to 5th to 6th grade and all the way till 9th, we are getting more and more students to proficiency. So, looking at 9th grade, when I see 81.3% of the last year's 9th graders pass this exam, remember that's inclusive of all of our special populations that we have. So we're very excited to see that growth going in their time here. We always say, like, in school counts, right? Time in school will make that difference for us. We also like when we're looking at the level 1 and 2 section, we want to see that number be very, very low. So when we're seeing the majority of the grades with under 15%, that's showing we have a lot of kids maybe in that level 3 area who can receive the supports that we have in schools, whether that be literacy support or after-school math labs, and bumping them up into that further passing rate. And then again, you can just see kind of the side-by-sides of the states. What was the state doing compared to where we were? On this sheet, we broke it out completely. We wanted you to see level by level what the scores were at each of the grade levels. Again, I cue us into grade 9, which I made sure to give them, the teachers, their kudos as well. Level 1, 1.2%. That's really exciting for us to see. And then, we're looking in our other grades. We look at our 7th grade cohort where, our eye is drawn to maybe, oh, that's different from the numbers we see in middle school, and we ask ourselves why. And I've been tracking since my arrival here in 2021, the group that was sort of who left in COVID and where were they when they left. And the two that I find most interesting are who left school in kindergarten, right? Because they now missed foundational years in literacy. And I'm also curious who left in 3rd grade, because they missed a lot of comprehension work that kind of kicks off next. And those are our 7th graders here and our 4th graders. And I just kind of track them and I kind of see what kind of effects have we seen in those two groups. I can't really explain exactly why, but they're who I'm seeing. They have this little bit of a dip where we're seeing in their progress, which I think comes from, we started building on the 2nd story with them because they missed some of that foundational work. To say all that, how COVID had its effects, Olga and I were really interested in digging back, to look at year by year our district proficiency rates. And we were able to go back until 2015, which is when this type of test came out. It was a little different in 15 and 16. It was PARC. I don't know if any of you remember that, and the panic PARC created, but look at us now, we're doing so great. And then in 2017, that's when it changed to NJSLA. So just kind of keep that in mind, that's why we went this far. But we wanted to look at where have we been as a district? What have we done? What kind of growth have we seen? What kind of change have we seen? And one, we noticed when looking at our ELA scores, when you get up to 2019 on this chart and you see the big dark line, that's our COVID shadow. We didn't have any test scores. But when we came back, when we're looking at ELA, we didn't really lose. We didn't have a lot of kids kind of fall off in their proficiencies. And that's something, 3 years later, we're looking back at, and we're okay, we did okay. Our teachers did great. The decisions that were made in district about how we taught virtually, when we brought kids back, we were able to keep them kind of where they needed to be. And then I also like here, when we start looking at the very bottom, our district passing rates, we're still on an upward climb from where we were in 2017, 2018. We're still rising incrementally, but we are rising, which we are very excited to see as well. The other thing I want to point out to you on this slide is our ability now to track cohorts of kids. So I keep pointing out that 9th grade group who got 81% passing. When we track them backwards, those are our yellow boxes on this slide, you can see how we've consistently brought more and more students to proficiency in that grade level cohort, which is just interesting to follow along, right? Again, we're seeing the longer they're here, the more our teachers, our supports, everything that we have in place is able to help our students succeed. Breakdown of this year's and comparison years of our demographics. So we have two groupings here. We have demographics and we have subgroups. Just to orient you, remember, students in the demographic categories will not overlap. That is our whole picture. You won't have any overlap within those categories, but we do also have some areas that we do not report on because of privacy issues if we don't have enough students. It would be too obvious of who we were reporting about publicly. Other subgroups, keep in mind there might be an overlap. You could possibly have a single student who falls into each of these categories. So that's just something to keep in mind as you're looking at these numbers. We work and we've continued to work very closely with our Hispanic population and our multilingual learners. We have so many supports that we've put in place as we think about what are their needs. And we think often about, yes, academic needs, but also what are some of those wraparound needs that we're seeing if they're possibly falling into another category as well, like economically disadvantaged. We're excited we have breakfast in schools this year, right? So we are starting learning with a full belly, which is our best place to start. So there's a lot of other things that we're working with Mr. Catelli, with Ms. Karansky, thinking about these special populations and what might their needs be beyond just academic programming and academic supports. And that leads us kind of into observations about student learning and next step. I had stated SHSD grade level cohorts typically exhibit growth as they move across grades, and our district-wide performance has remained consistent, if not a little better, in comparison to past years. We'd like to continue to work with Director of Special Service, the Director of Multilingual Ed, and also Building Admin to conduct a deep analysis on some of those subgroups and think about what else can we do for these groups. Also, we have many internal benchmarks, which we also use as another data point for a lot of our students. We want to make sure that we're never using a single picture to kind of cover the whole child. So we have, in ELA, we have reading levels, we still use iReady, we're using our writing rubrics, and all of that data gets kind of compiled and pulled together to determine who needs supports. And then finally, continuing for our multilingual learners, the sheltered instruction education, we have a lot more teachers going this year, so we can continue to be responsive to the kids that we have in front of us. And mathematics.
Hey, mathematics. I'm very excited to report that growth in mathematics was 3 full % across all grade level. So this is a very good percentage increase, and we'll look at some particular grades more carefully than others. If you notice, all grade levels in the second from the last column have passing rate very close to 60 or above this, at 62, 59, 59.6, 64, 60. The only grade that seemed lower, as you know, is grade 8, and this is not the entire grade that tested. Those students split into Algebra 1 and even some in geometry, and only partial grade level take grade 8 exam. So all these numbers at 60 and even some at 70, it's a good improvement from previous years. It's a good growth, and actually, if you look at the state passing rates, similar to what Lindsay mentioned, we are very particular in all our supports and all our work. Look at the middle school. We do not have the same dip as state has. State goes down to 40s and 30s on a grade level of 6 and 7, and we don't. We keep their grounds, and somewhere around grade 6, we actually over 28% above the state level. These are very good results. Algebra 1 showed tremendous growth, and we had 7 full percentage points increase to 59.2. This is also a very good number, and this is full 20% above state level. Now, if you look at the next slide, similar to ELA, we're simply looking at the different levels, level 1 through 5. Level 1, students who are far from passing yet. We want these numbers to be as small as possible. And this again would indicate that all these numbers are single digit. Just a reminder that in mathematics, as opposed to ELA, we do test students immediately, even if they just walked into our doors a week ago. So we do have students who just join us, who are still learning language, who may not have even a full year of instructions. Grade 7 is also becoming now a partial grade, as some of our students take in Algebra 1. So when you look at the big picture over the years, keep in mind that 7 is a partial grade, and so is 8 is a partial grade. Algebra 1, though, is a cumulative result from grade 7 all the way up to grade 12. So now we are required to test every student taking Algebra 1. Geometry is a partial grade, as students only taking it in grade 9. And Algebra 2, we have such a small numbers, again, it's only 9 graders that we're not allowed to report them, but they're doing very well. This is again, as Ms. Barner mentioned, we decided this year to look way back, starting from year 2015, 2016 at our results, and look at the multi-year trends. In mathematics, it's a little bit even more than in ELA. This is not exactly comparing apples with apples. In the early years, there was some noticeable number of refusals. Tests changed a lot between 15 and 16. Some of our demographics changed, and some testing grades changed. We went from testing students up to grade 11, down to 10, down to 9. So the number's not exactly the same. However, Algebra 1 was expanded, so now we have to test everybody up to grade 12. So you can see, I would like you to look at the last line, district passing rate. This, I think, is very interesting. Different from ELA, you can clearly see shift down after COVID. The big dark line is the COVID year. So we went from passing rate, you can see us climbing from 52 to 55 to 56, and then very noticeable gap and going down to 53%. However, happy to report that we actually were able to rise back to pre-COVID level and even surpass it this year. In fact, 59.9% is the highest passing rate we ever had. If you look in at Algebra 1, look at what a huge jump they did after COVID, from 49% to 52 to 59. That's really kudos to them. Look at grade 6. And 64.9 is the highest they ever been. And grade 7 also going up, and also keep in mind that now it's a partial grade, well, a few years before COVID it was a whole grade because of our double observation. Again, you can see I highlighted some cohorts. Just like Lindsay mentioned, we're looking at the same students doing better as they go up in the grades, not the other way around. This is a demographic slide. So you can see the passing rates by different demographics and then by different subgroups. Interesting on this slide, every single demographics, every single subgroup actually went up, and it's very relative to, very similar to what it was for the whole population. So about, you can see about 3%, about 3%. Some numbers are smaller, so it's difficult to say. But in general, everything goes up. There's one exception with students with disabilities, as I misspoke a little bit. So we'll look at that. And we come into observation, student learning, and next steps. Again, very similar with ELA. Student performance performed consistent or better in comparison to past years. In fact, absolute majority of grade levels went up. District-wide student math scores are exceeding pre-COVID level, very happy to report. We're going to collaborate with Director of Special Services, Director of Multilingual Education, building out to conduct deep analysis of subgroups, performance, and possible support. We do have our internal benchmarks, and we continue sheltered instruction. Now going back to areas previously identified to possible have improvement and enhancement, very happy to report that now we have 2 math support specialists in Bedwell. And these are the grades that we were the most concerned with. And we move to science. In science, we lost a couple of percentage points. We're still high above the state at levels 3 and 4 at 40.4% in grade 5, at 35.8% in grade 8, and at 43.5% in grade 11. You can see the level 1s are also much smaller numbers than the state. And again, this is the test that is difficult to navigate, is very different from students usually have in their classrooms. So we know where we need to work forward. Also, please look at the decimal passing rate in the state. And this is something that we are aware of, that this is difficult test. We're going to work on a few things here. So this is our split by level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. Again, smaller percentages for level 4, and the total passing rates at 40, 35, 43, as I mentioned before. This is multi-year trend look. We didn't have this test at all, starting in year 2015 as math and ELA. This test first appeared in 2019, and results were not available for an entire year. So in fact, many parents never saw these results. So we tested students in the spring 2019, and results did not come to school until winter of 2020, and we were ready, or maybe the spring, we were ready to go already away. So those are results pre-COVID, 45, 34, 38%. So you can see we're really at the same level at this point. We did a little bit better a couple of years ago, we went a little bit down. There's a variety of comments or observations I can make here. Well, one good thing, I'm not sure about year 2019, but we now have almost 100% rate at which students are taking this test. So last year we were able to change our schedule and we have all the students taking the test. There might be some concerns about how serious students taking the test, and there might be a lot of test fatigue. So for high schoolers, it will be a year after AP exams, and for our little ones in middle school, it's really 6, 7, 8 days of testing in the row. So those are the negatives. Looking at the results, here's how you see it from demographic and other subgroup perspectives. 44% for our white students. I'm not sure how to explain this number other than maybe students did not take this test seriously at some point. You can see other subgroups did go up: Hispanic, Asian, students with disability also did not do so well at this particular test. However, economical disadvantages is huge increase to 19%, and English language learners also did better, a little bit better. So here's our thoughts on what we can do better and where we're coming from. So we were able, in single year, improve participation from grade 11 from 75% to over 95%. We changed the schedule, all students are testing. Maybe there are some concerns how fast they're clicking through the answers, but we at least got them all there. We will collaborate again with our colleagues, Director of Special Services, Director of Multilingual Education and Building Admin, to look at student-by-student results. Another thing that we're going to do this year, we're going to do a little bit more test prep. Because the test is so different, we need to try to emulate items better. The problem is there's total lack of released items from the state, so we'll have to do it on our own. So a little bit more emulated test and a little bit more talking to students to take it seriously. Another thing that we would like to put in place is diagnostic assessment. Just like in math and ELA, diagnostic assessment would have helped tremendously. Again, unfortunately for science, such diagnostic assessment not necessarily exist. So we're looking for the best solutions here. And that concludes our presentation for science. Other statewide assessment that students took last year: access testing for MLLs, students identify as English language learners, grades K through 12. And then students took so-called DLM test, again, identify students with disabilities for whom general state assessments are not developmentally appropriate. And so students took it to grades 3 through 8 and 11. Now these results are highly individualized and will not be publicly shared. We don't have many students identified for taking DLM, and as for access for MLs, Mr. Cattell will address some results that we can share.
Thank you, Dr. Edgerton. So I have one slide, kind of as Dr. Edgerton spoke to, the way we share the results for Access 2.0 and what they represent is a little bit different than the grade level exams for ELA and math. So this is the one topic we're kind of talking about here and focusing on. Just as a little bit of a background for what this exam is, if a student is identified as a multilingual learner, they, in March, they take an exam that tests their, in English, listening comprehension, speaking abilities, reading comprehension, and writing abilities. It is a multi-day exam that tests all 4 of those areas. It's not necessarily an exam that you can study for. It is more of a test of your ability to produce or can take language at that time. In fact, in kindergarten, it's actually a one-on-one exam. Even with little ones, they're sitting in their books and kind of working them through and assessing everything. So you will see those scores in there. A student's score is on a 1 to 6 scale. So that's the entering to reaching that you see on that slide. The state designates a student eligible to exit services at a 4.5 score. So we are not looking to see all 6s to say a student is exited. That's the point where we say a ESL program is not necessarily the most beneficial place to help a student continue to grow their English language skills. So that's just a little background on the exam itself. What you see below that is a composite level. Students get scores in listening, speaking, reading, and writing. They are not all the same. And if I look at every single student's score, we'll see some students that have great speaking skills, and then they're developing in their reading and writing skills, and all over the place. Depends on their background, a lot of different circumstances. Composite brings them all together into one score. It's easier to report, but I always like to caution, it's a little bit difficult to use because what their individual component scores may be are that tells a much more important story for our use than just kind of reporting out they were a 1.7, a 3.4. We want a little bit more of that picture. So what is reported here is the composites by school. So the entering level is level 1. You see a very high amount in BHS, which makes sense. We have a newcomer program there for students with interrupted education, and we expect students to be entering who have no educational background at that level. They will be scoring at a 1 for a while. But then I'm happy to see the amount of students at BMS and Bedwell, that we have BMS on that slide twice.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. Yes, blue is Bedwell. On the blue there, the blue and darker green BMS, I'm glad to see there at the level 3 composite that they're kind of getting closer to that point where they are exiting. But those composite scores make sense to me. But when we break this down and how we use this within the department is looking at what trends do we see by those language domains. And when we kind of analyzed that this year and sat and talked with the principals and examined everything, the results were interesting. In general, we saw Bedwell a strong increase in reading and writing growth, but speaking not necessarily increase at that same rate. So that's something that we've been talking about, and actually the CNI team has been talking about, and the admin of how we're addressing some of those issues and what supports we're getting staff there. At BMS, listening scores were fantastic. We saw a large amount of growth in listening, students' individual scores in listening, and we saw teachers really taking advantage of a lot of work to support students in their listening growth. But writing stood out as an area that we want to get more support for this year to kind of help students in that writing growth. And to take a step back, when I'm speaking about writing, I'm talking about an individual student's growth. This exam realistically is tracking how did student A over multiple years grow, and each domain, how have they been growing. That's more or less what we're looking at. BHS, the domains didn't necessarily stand out. The trend that we realistically saw was upperclassmen started to see some lower growth. We didn't see that same growth as we saw with the 9th and 10th graders. That makes sense based on the way language acquisition works, but it is something we're talking about, and I'm working with the BHS admin team too to talk about how are we supporting and getting more resources to make sure that we kind of continue that growth as students go up in grade level. But like I said, when we analyze these results, we're talking about this with building admin, at a district level, we're talking about it with teachers, and teachers of all content areas. That's the sheltered instruction training that Lindsay and Olga mentioned as well. That is support for content area teachers to help students with all of these skills and components. And it's also important to support families with that too. Families get their students' access scores through the mail, but it's like it took me a long time to explain this to everybody, right, and go through all of this. So when we have in-person meetings, we always make sure that there's a space where we can pull up your students' access scores, talk to them about what goals we're setting for them based on what we're seeing there, and ways to support at home. And that's just basically the last point I want to end on, that realistically the goal that we keep setting and keep working on is those family connections are vital. That's one of the most important things, and the research is absolutely there to back. The more students and families are connected with what's happening in their school and what's happening with the goals that are set and the progress their students making, we see those, we see that investment pay dividends, especially in the ESL world. And I think there's 2 last slides on how everything is sent home for Dr. Edgerton. All right, good. I'm going to pass it back to Dr. Edgerton to close up.
Thank you. I will be fast, I promise. The last slides, the dates first. These are freshly released dates for the spring testing, for the next testing. NJGPA, if you remember, this is a state required testing for our juniors, will take place on the week of March 10th, and precisely it will be 11th and the 12th here at the high school. NJLA testing, the one that we just reported, will be happening in May from 1st to 22nd, 2025. And finally, printed copies of individual student reports will be mailed home tomorrow. Everything is ready to go, and envelopes are ready to be mailed. It was expected in a couple of days. Thank you.
Thank you.
While Dr. Brochel is making his way over, I would just like to personally thank this team who I work with every day, shoulder to shoulder. I can't thank you enough. The work, your expertise, your dedication to our students does not go unnoticed and is much appreciated. So thank you. You made all those numbers exciting for us. Jackie.
Thank you all. I want to take some time to update the board on some items that have taken place since our last meeting together, a regular public meeting at any rate. We did host a pretty robust new educators orientation in the end of August, 27th through the 29th, and in advance of our return on September 5th. We have 308 staff members this year, and we had a host of folks at all 3 schools that were able to offer an appropriate welcome and orientation for. There were some board members that were able to be available that day just to offer a welcoming hello. And these folks are were winners, in my view, of pretty intense competitions, for each of these particular openings. We're thrilled with what the new staff members bring to the district in not only their experience, but their passion and their energy. And it was a great few days to spend with them as well. And so I wanted to share that with you. Our high school has a marching band, and we've had one for many years, and we continue to have one. And on August 29th, they held a preview performance for their 2024 show. I was actually able to be there with Mr. Baker, and that was good fun. And it's called Bruno Mars's 24K Jukebox. And they were able to have a preview for us after their annual band camp. And they're just doing great work out there. We have seen an increase in the amount of students that are able to participate in the marching band, and Mr. Taisler is not new to us here in the district. He's been at the high school for a few years, but he's taken over the marching band, and things are going really well. We've seen him not only performing on the field at football games, but he also performs in the stands, and they are also going to participate in a few competitions this year at Wayne Hills, and for the annual State Marching Band Festival as well. So we're excited for them, and we're always looking to grow our programs. I think the challenges at a school of our size here with the extracurricular program that we offer is sometimes there's just only so much time in the day for our youngsters to shoehorn particular activities in. So we do offer a host of after-school sports, and sometimes that just kind of limits your pool, but really great stuff that's going on in our arts program. School year is definitely in full swing. The HSA over at Bedwell held a Passport to Bedwell event, so that's your lower left photo, and a great one at that. We're also able to see over at the middle school newcomer breakfast and locker setups for students. The high school had a senior barbecue. We have been hosting, or not hosting, but we've had some HSA and CHEP meetings on site. Freshman nights and senior parent nights for our incoming high school folks, as well as our annual open house arrangement and Samara night. We're currently in the throes of auditing the 2023-24 school year. So they have been busy working with the business office and me regarding conducting that audit for the board. And although the date that the board has to certify the audit seems to shift every year, and stay tuned. In the coming meetings, we will have an audit report for the board regarding our fiscal practices. And just a few weeks ago, or a few days ago rather, there was the elementary school had a family picnic sponsored by the HSA, and there's a photo there of a staff band who seem to pop up at the best times. We do have upcoming events that are posted in our Friday folders and in our community folders as well. There's always a big lead up throughout the summer to the first days of school and the first weeks of school, and there's been a lot of awesome sights and sounds inside of our hallways, and so those educators here in the room know it when I say that there is nothing that replaces the sound of children, inside of our classrooms and our hallways. And we're seeing curious kids, focused kids, and certainly happy kids here in our photos at Bedwell. Our middle school folks have been working very closely, particularly in the area of climate and culture, developing social contracts and focusing on some norms that we have worked with the middle school staff on, and we have some photographs there from their first days of school regarding that. You did hear an update from our student representative. She did leave out the cross-country, I noticed, so cross-country is 2-2, but she stole some of the statistical thunder here in a lot of the great things that are happening on our fields, on our courts, and in our gymnasiums, and out on our running trails. I think that it's important to note that our athletic program is a function of our extracurricular program. It's one that the board, I know, believes very strongly in. As recently as last year, we added at least 5 new clubs and opportunities for students to participate in. That's important for them to have outlets outside of the classroom. So it's great to see kids and achievement all around on all these fields. And courts. We have a cheerleading team now for the first time in a few years at least. And from what I understand from the youth group, there is a growing number of cheerleaders at the youth level kind of working its way through Bedwell and the middle school. So that's great to see. We have 10 cheerleaders that are doing great work for us. 46 cross-country runners, 53 field hockey players, 70 football players, 58 on our boys soccer team, 46 on our girls soccer team, 23 girls tennis players, and 39 on our volleyball teams. So that's great to see. Some more action shots here. Recently, the HSA held a celebration for those that serve as bus drivers and bus aides and crossing guards in town. And it's held over at Bedwell after their morning runs. And it's one of my personal favorite events of the year. Anywhere where you can celebrate the great work for the people that keep our kids safe, and also have pork roll, egg, and cheese is good for me. And Mr. Polhofer agrees with me on that point. But it was a great event. The kindergarten kids and the first graders all sang to the drivers, and it's definitely one of the cooler things that happens. And you can, as happy as the kids are, and as excited as the kids are, I can tell you that the staff that works on our buses and the staff that serve as our crossing guards really, really appreciate it. So thanks to the HSA for that. Technology is always a busy department. This summer we fully transitioned over to Genesis. We're at the point now where there is a lot of troubleshooting and kind of working on solutions with very unique particular facets of Genesis, but all in all it is going beautifully. I do want to point out a gentleman on our team named Chris Griffith, who is just a treasure to this district and has done beautiful work regarding this transition. He's extraordinarily patient and very, very kind, and he has been instrumental in transitioning to a program that we feel is ultimately a better product and lets us perform our work in a much more seamless way. So the transition overall has been strong. We are working towards the end of the first marking period, particularly at the high school as it relates to grading. There's some unique variables inside of Genesis that are just new to the teachers, so we're working towards that and having a seamless grade entry process there. All of our schools have new visitor management systems. We have instituted a new print management process for all of our desktop computers and upgraded image and software systems. We are focused on a district website redesign, and we're engaging that work with a few vendors in October. We do have a cross-section of folks that not only work in the district, but also are parents in the district that are going to vet out multiple website platforms to give us feedback on what they think works, what they think doesn't work, so we can get a better sense of how to serve the community, in that sense. And we are also upgrading our work ticketing processing programs as well. And the entire tech department certainly deserves some thanks to get us up and running to start the school year. So Jeremy, our good friend Ricky, Chris Griffith, Scott Barone, who is in the photograph, Connor Flynn, that is overseeing a lot of the website work for us as we move forward. Brian Machado and Steve Shapiro have done some great work. On September 14th, the district was a partner with the local church clergy to host a welcome back to school celebration for all families inside of the Somerset Hills community. We gathered outside of the Sacred Heart Chapel in Bernardsville, and there were approximately 50 families there. Lots of food, fun, certainly families getting together after the summer months. We also were able to bring on our team from the transportation department, from our IT department, and from a variety of folks around our district in order to ensure that families were signed up for the services that they needed, and that the transition was a seamless one. So we had a team that was getting people up and running in the area of Genesis. We had a team that was cross-checking particular bus routes for their kids, and we also had some connectivity to other community groups that serve a lot of our predominantly Hispanic families, and it was a great event. Michael Catelli is our liaison between Sacred Heart Chapel and the other clergy in town and the school district, and this is an event that's been out and about for about a decade, and it started off very small and it's grown. And we were at Kiwanis for a little bit. We relocated this year due to another event, but always a great day. And we have some great partners here. Many know him as Pastor Dan. His name's Daniel Fenko, and he is a big supporter of not just the district, but the Somerset Hills, the Bernardsville area, and he's just a terrific supporter of families. And Reverend Beth from St. Bernard's was there as well, and certainly had a big role in coordinating this event. There were a host of organizations on hand as well. Communities in Crisis were there, and they actually had some students from the high school that are going to be subject to recognition in October from the board that are doing some beautiful work at Communities in Crisis, and being able to outline what the needs of the community are was a big focus for Communities in Crisis there, so they used the opportunity to gather as much information as possible from those folks that were in attendance. Communities in Crisis really have a variety of services that they can provide, and I do have a meeting coming up with them, with a team of us here from the district with Communities in Crisis to kind of further talk about some of their services and how they may be able to service us. Preschool Advantage was there, and they are a partner in the area of preschool education for parents in the district. Grupo Cajola was there. They are focused on supporting our Guatemalan families, and in particular those that also support the culture called Mom. So that was really great to be able to meet them in person, and they will be at a curriculum committee meeting in the distant future here. Sweet Reads gifted books in Spanish and English to our youngest learners, and certainly the Bernardsville Police Department had an active presence, and like I said, we had a host of staff members that were there and greeting kids and just really making the day special. Old news, but recently, last week, the board held a special meeting whereupon you authorized me and Mr. Marco to work with your land use attorney to move an application forward to the planning board for Bernardsville regarding a modification to your property here at the high school site. You may recall Claire Taylor spoke at our August board meeting. She represented the high school green team. They are looking to collect 1,000 pounds of plastic film by Halloween. They're already up to 500 pounds. And they are very active in and around town. They partnered with the borough as well. So if any of you at the next board meeting want to bring some plastic film, we will collect it and hand it off to the folks here at the high school who are working under Joseph Young. Mark your calendar for the middle school is having a car wash, and they are going to support funds to raise funds for the 8th grade class over at the middle school, and it will be in front of the administrative offices on October 5th, starting at 9. The board has initiated, along with me, a new committee here, and Ms. Ballard is the chair of that committee. It's our Student Services Committee. So the auspices and the Office of Student Services oversees a host of different areas, special education, Section 504. We also, that office overlooks nursing. We'll also examine interscholastic athletics and climate and culture and diversity inside of that committee. And our first committee was to kind of focus on the charge here and develop our focus and philosophy. And I know that Ms. Ballard will have a formal report, and I don't want to really get in the way of that. But focusing on the student-parent experience and to be able to identify ways to enhance all of the areas that I mentioned prior, be it special education or athletics or 504 or nursing and climate and culture. So more to come there. This is Hispanic Heritage Month, and we are in our VOCHES program and VOCHES initiative, which Mr. Catelli has been overseeing and working very closely, not only with our community on, but with the kids that we're serving. And what we did was, or what Michael did with the students last year, was conducted a survey of students at the middle school and at the high school to understand their perspective on things and their kind of position on things. And nearly 200 students responded, 40% of whom were of Hispanic descent. Those that were of Hispanic descent that responded, 70% were from either Guatemala or Paraguay. We had respondees that were of Cuban descent, Ecuadorian descent, Puerto Rican descent, and who were Spanish. And that was self-identified by those students. Students were able to draft what was important to them, and they wrote in the story about their families, and they wrote about cooking, and they wrote about time together, and there were a lot of references to a particular Paraguayan cake that is made with corn and cheese, we did learn a lot there. Students reported how important it was to share their experiences and have the avenues to share their experiences outward. They also identified a particular struggle in how to grasp certain aspects of their family's history and their culture's history. And so that is now becoming, an area for us to be cognizant of in our social studies classes and in our world language classes as well. We have plans to further educate the district in the area of Hispanic heritage. Again, our survey responses will highlight programming and inform programming that illustrates the cultures that do exist in our communities. We have a Spanish teacher at Bedwell, Mr. Miranda, you may know, is working to organize the ABCs of Hispanic culture. In that vein, we're asking families to share food recipes, ingredients recipes, dances, and stories at Bedwell and at a middle school night event on October 4th. And we're looking forward to that. At the high school level, they've been collaborating with a local historian that was funded by the Somerset Hills Education Foundation. His name's Barry Thompson, who is going to present the history of immigration in the Somerset Hills, and we intend to have that during the Week of Respect. So I'm going to invite Mr. Catelli and put him on the spot a little bit to speak about some of the work that's being done with our mom culture, and if you could come on up and talk about that culture and some of the great partnerships you've been able to develop so far.
Yeah, thank you. I sent this image to Brian today because I just thought it was such a unique image. It is hard to see kind of the text of that book, but it is a book printed in a indigenous Central American, predominantly Guatemalan language, It is actually an oral-only language, but that group, Grupo Cajola, works with a lot of people and different groups on the ground in kind of southern Guatemala to kind of take that oral-only language and kind of do a process called transliterating, more or less applying English letters to sounds in a language that might not initially use English letters to produce books and kind of capture the culture, capture some of the heritage, capture their stories. And right now they have two, and actually a CD as well that we have a couple copies of, that kind of just bring some awareness to that in the district. At the event that we had on the 14th, we were so happy to have them there. They raffled books for students. Everybody could enter to be able to win one. And then we sent them out this week and got them into the hands of different students. And that's a picture of one of our elementary school winners, who I think you can see the happiness and pride that he gets to have a book kind of in that language that is used at home. And actually at the September 14th event, there were a lot of good conversations with the families as well, because they were saying, why order these books for? We can't read this. And they were kind of helping people kind of understand, how can you access them? How can you kind of take this language that is oral only, like work on kind of reading and sound out and just help your children understand it, help your children value it and grow it as well. That's kind of almost back to what I was talking about before. One of the most important things is, using your first language at home, learning to, speak, and if possible, read and kind of use that first language and value that. Pays dividends on the work that happens in ESL programs too. So we talk a lot about Spanish, and we talk a lot about making sure that we're recognizing getting resources in Spanish, but really this year we've been kind of making sure that we're advocating and getting more and more and recognizing the unique Guatemalan culture and community that we have that uses Mom here. And actually I believe we have a translator on the agenda as well, right, who is fluent in Spanish, Mom in English, and we're excited to be able to kind of have her available to help with the community to kind of connect and make sure that we are just like opening up more and more of the school to families that use that as their first language. Good. Yes, sir. Yeah, there's a lot to explain about it, as Brian said too. Some of that curriculum committee.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. I met a great advocate for mom families. She hails from Morristown, and we met at the event on the 14th. We invited her to our curriculum committee meeting, and we're looking forward to that. We just kind of hit it off, so we're looking forward to partnering a bit more. About a calendar year ago, I attended a call to action at a local synagogue regarding some anti-Semitic movements and activities, and how school districts could work in concert with clergy and work in concert with law enforcement in order to prepare our youth and inform our youth and educate our youth. And there are a lot of kind of different ways to go about this, and there were some programs that we investigated, but the administration at the high school and at the middle school felt strongly that they would be able to, and they wanted to, create a program that they felt best served our kids here in Somerset Hills. So during our Week of Respect, we will be hosting an anti-Semitism youth summit for our student leaders at the middle school and at the high school, really in response to the number of anti-Semitic incidents that have arisen nationally and statewide. Student leaders will have an opportunity to hear from leaders in the field, as well as work in groups to understand how to combat any incidents of hatred that they may come in contact with or they may be around. We do have speakers confirmed from local synagogues, educators in the field, as well as the Jewish Community Center Metro West, who have been instrumental in the research that we've done here and the preparation that we've done in order to better educate our youth than what we have been doing. So it's been productive for the administration for both of those schools to collaborate with students in those schools in in a formalized way, in a formalized program. So we're looking forward to being able to provide that for our students. And looking ahead, our policy committee continues to examine its facility use policy, which was approved at the first reading level. They have received feedback from interested parties with respect to facility use, and I have conveyed those pieces of information to the committee, and they certainly continue to look at that policy. We do have a committee meeting coming up tomorrow. Burnhamsville Planning Board, we have a facility application forthcoming on a date yet to be determined. Our Facilities and Operations Committee continues to examine our lower fields to prepare for the spring, in addition to the development of a long-range facilities plan. Student Services Committee, we need to schedule a series of dates for that work moving forward. We are preparing, believe it or not, for the 25-26 budget. So that is just on the cusp of beginning on the administrative side of things. We're also planning to launch a community initiative around the strategic plan. That'll be in the winter. We're also preparing for our triennial evaluation from the New Jersey Department of Education. They have a program that's set forth in statute called the Quality Single Accountability Continuum that we will respond to, and they will conduct site visits as well. And we will need a board member to represent the board on that committee. And I spoke about it briefly before, but we are also concluding the audit for the 23-24 school year. And Ms. Frenda, that culminates the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Brochel. Mr. Grandpa, I believe we have a retiree to recognize, yes.
Whereas David Brothers has been employed from September 2007 through June 2025 as a teacher, and whereas he exemplified expertise, commitment, and professionalism in his duties, and now therefore be it resolved that the Somerset Hills School District and Board of Education recognize David Brothers' retirement effective July 1st, 2025, and extend him congratulations and best wishes for a happy, healthy, and enjoyable retirement.
Thank you very much. And yes, wishing Mr. Brothers the best of his retirement, which will not be effective until the close of this school year. And now we will move into public comments for actionable agenda items. We very much welcome input from the public. Public comments are welcome at this time on any actionable agenda item. Towards the end of the meeting, there is a second public forum on any topic. Please state your name and address. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. At 3 minutes, you will be interrupted and asked to pause to allow any other members of the public who would like to speak an opportunity to do so. An individual may return to the podium to complete their statement after everyone else has had an opportunity to speak for a total of 2 times at the podium. Please understand that our public forums are not structured as question and answer sessions, but are offered as opportunities to share your thoughts with the board. In instances where the board feels there is a misunderstanding or inaccuracy, the board president or superintendent may address the comment. In accordance with the New Jersey statute, the board will not discuss matters regarding specific personnel. Public comments will be limited to 30 minutes. A reminder for all parties in attendance to remain respectful and there should be no interaction between the speaker and the audience. No members of the audience should interfere with or interrupt the speaker's comments. We thank you in advance for your input. And as always, Mrs. DeMarco will have a timer that will be set for 3 minutes. We encourage speakers to keep track of where they are in that timer so that they won't be surprised when I unfortunately have to interrupt at that 3-minute mark to offer opportunities for others. So at this time, if there is anyone that'd like to come to the podium for an actionable agenda item. Okay. If not, then can I get a motion to close public comments? Mr. Granpe, and a second? Ms. Santoro. Okay, thank you. Then we will move into the approval of the minutes. I am going to ask for a motion to approve the public input and action executive meeting minutes for August 21st, 2024, and special meeting and executive meeting minutes for September 16th, 2024. Can I have a motion, please? Ms. Gills, and a second. Mr. Baker, is there any discussion on the minutes? No. Okay, then roll call, please.
Mrs. T. Grandpré,
Yes.
Ms. Gills,
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro,
Yes.
Mr. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Ballard,
Yes on the 21st and abstain on the 16th.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
And Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Then at this time, we would like to move into the report of the Finance Committee. Mr. Baker.
Thank you. The Finance Committee met on September the 11th for about an hour. All committee members were in attendance with Dr. Brochel and Mrs. DeMarco. We had three guests, two from our solution architecture, and one from Musco Sports Lighting. We talked about 8 various topics over the hour. One item we talked about, and it's on the board, it's on the agenda for approval. We got a donation from CW Solutions of a Promethean board, which is like a whiteboard, but a little more fancy. There's one at the library now. I saw the library got one too. I was examining it the other day, so I know what it looks like. But it's a donation, and we really appreciate that, and Dr. Brochel feels that it's best suited to go to Bedwell, so you should keep your eyes open there. So that's agenda item number 10. We are also approving tonight on the agenda number 18, we talked about increasing the hourly pay for our resource officers in each of the 3 schools from $40 an hour to $42.50 an hour. Starting this month, and that impacts our budget for the remainder of the year about $4,500. We feel that's appropriate to keep up with other school districts around us for retention of the staff and to make sure that we can hire new people if we need to. Next item we talked about was the installation of LED lighting for Alcott Field. I'm not going to go into that because we already had their presentation, but the presentation we saw last Monday was the same one that the committee saw on that day. We also talked about the lower field drainage, and I'm not going to steal Mrs. Santoro's thunder on that, but just saying that the number came in higher than we expected, and we need to come up with a better plan. We can't afford that at the moment. We also next talked about the track surface, and our high school rep talked about the Alcott track. It looks to me when I walk by tonight, it's 2/3 red. And hopefully the weather will get better these next few days, and we can finish it by probably next week, I hope. Because after it's painted, they have to come back and put the lines on and all the fancy numbers and everything like that. So hopefully that'll be finished in the next week or two. We talked about another item which is also on the F&O report on the tennis courts. There's 6 tennis courts at the Polo Grounds which the school helped install, and we have to maintain them, and they're in bad shape, and the cost to upgrade those is also very expensive, probably $500,000. So we got to figure out a plan for that. So we're going to be talking about that these next few months, figuring out what we can do, especially now that we're going to be talking about the capital improvements for the next school year. We talked about, we have a negative lunch balance. What does the negative lunch balance mean? That is, from last year, we have about $20,000 of unpaid lunch meals from various students across all three schools. Some of those are parents forgetting to upload their accounts on time, things like that. Some of it is the free and reduced lunch students who get that are buying other things that are not free or reduced, and they don't realize that, or the parents don't realize that. So we have an education thing to do with some of our people. We also have to go after a lot of parents who forget to upload their accounts to keep their students' fund in the positive. So Mrs. DeMarco has been sending out emails to parents to remind them to get their balances straightened out. We'll be talking more about that. If that doesn't work, we hate to take any drastic measures, But we can't keep going on $20,000 per year. It's not something that we don't budget for it, so that has to be rectified. And the last item we talked about, and it's on agenda number 19, is we're doing a lease purchase of a lot of tech equipment, which is Chromebooks, laptops, iPads, and a server. So that's $336,000 at lease purchase, and that equipment will be paid for over a period of 4 to 5 years. And that's my report. I'll turn it back to Mrs. Frenda.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. So then at this time, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve action items number 1 through 22 on the agenda. I'll make a motion. Mr. Grandpré, and a second. Mr. Baker, and discussion for finance. Does anybody have anything?
I have a quick question. Are we ever going to get to the point where we're not going to deny kids lunches if they have a balance, will we?
No, that's not.
Because I know you said you don't want to do anything drastic.
Well, when it's drastic, I mean, sometimes you don't get a report card, you don't graduate. There's a lot of things like that, that's standard. You can't graduate, unless everything is up to date. So, I mean, we've never done that before, but that would be some of the things that you could think about. I don't know what's the right thing to do. I think parents, once they know and they're reminded, they should get their house in order, I know lives are busy to think about all that sometimes, but again, it's not something that we want to keep spending $30,000, $40,000 a year on, so.
Understood. I just don't want a child embarrassed.
No,
we
the
never
child,
do that.
the child will never be embarrassed when they go to bed. That will never happen. No.
Thank you.
I think there are also some communities that are doing outreach, like I've read about this, that, some communities will come together and get donations to help pay off those balances on behalf of the kids or the...
And we've had some inquiries to that end, but the challenge is, it's sort of like an all or nothing proposition where you can't just take a fraction of the
Right, because
overall
then how do you
bill.
allocate that? Right.
So, and I've
Okay.
had
Yeah, that
some
makes
discussions, I've had some folks that, from either personally or private organizations, civic organizations are interested in that, but it's really like a large number scenario.
Got it.
And I can't remember if we discussed this specifically in finance, or to what extent, when we switch companies for our payment, is there an automatic renewal that parents can set up, or it's like to automatically reload?
That I'm not 100%
Okay, because as a part of any kind of education, outreach and whatnot, if that is an option.
You can set up a balance notification
Okay.
for yourself.
Yeah.
Because I know I get that. So like you can set it up so if your child's balance goes below, you pick the number, it'll give you a notification. But I don't know if like it can be triggered by the district. I don't,
Yeah, I think, I could be wrong, but I think I had some type of automatic renewal previously when I got to the initial, but.
I think the only thing automatic now is the district indications if you're not paid up.
Okay, so just something to look into maybe if there's just
May or may not
another
have gotten one for a few
education
dollars.
And I do have another question, sorry. Number 20B, the Bush Law Group Legal Services, $27,500. Is this in addition to the $80,000 cap that we had on there?
Yes. The 80,000 wasn't a cap, it was just a...
Estimate?
No. When the auditors like to see us do board resolutions, they want us to kind of put a not to exceed amount. So it was just an arbitrary number that I put in as not to exceed this amount. So as you can see, there's other vendors here that we went over that not to exceed amount. So it's not a cap, it's more of a placeholder saying, so if I do exceed that amount, we just approve a little more.
Is there anyone else for finance? No? Okay. I think we can do roll call.
Ms. Gills,
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro,
Yes.
Mr. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Ballard,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Mrs. D. Grunfried,
Yes.
and Mrs. Brenda.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, then we are going to move on to the report of facilities and operations. Mrs. Santoro. Oh, I'm sorry. Old business. Is there anyone that has anything for old business for financing? No, anything for new business for finance? Now, facilities and operations, Ms. Santoro.
Okay. So F&O met on September 11th at 4. Light facilities, we had, the bulk of our meeting was spent on light finance. The bulk of our meeting was spent on a presentation with regards to the lighting, so from Musco and the architect. So that, and as everybody knows, we had a special meeting where that presentation was then given publicly, and the board has voted to move that to the planning board. So that is just the high level of that. We did discuss the lower field, although I don't have a lot more to report out on at this point, because the estimates for the work came back higher than we had originally anticipated, and will need to be planned for in our budgeting process, either in our capital budget. So we are going to continue to gather information on what the small slit process, because we didn't have a quote on that process at the time of our meeting. We are going to try to get that figure and understand what that would cost. But once we do that and understand what it's gonna, how we need to budget for this, administration will make recommendations as to how we're gonna approach this and whether it might be in phases or not.
Yeah, if I could,
Yeah, please,
I've had
yeah.
some additional discussions with your engineers at T&M.
Okay.
We talked about the cost issues that we're experiencing as it relates to the quotes that are coming in. I did articulate that we're interested in a smaller trench if that costing does come in. We'd be happy to hear it. We're also discussing other options with other vendors regarding things as long as wide-ranging as grading to just preparing the field in advance of the spring season for the baseball season. So it's an active, kind of a daily active case that we're hoping to have some clarity in October.
And I think, the committee remains committed to getting this work done. We were hoping for that ideal scenario where we could take care of it in one project and have it done by the spring. That does not look like it's going to be the case. So, but we are absolutely committed to getting it into the condition it needs to be for all of our student athletes. Bob talked about the tennis courts. That's another project that more information will be forthcoming, because it is a big, it has a big price tag on it as well. So we need to consider options for how we approach that. Again, our administration is going to take a look at that and present some solutions to the committee in the upcoming months. We mentioned the lights, and we got an update on the track. As we've all heard, it's moving along, and everybody is excited for it to be finished soon. And then we just briefly reviewed lunch menus, and Mashios is very committed to getting our feedback and providing nutritional options that the kids are going to enjoy, and we're just looking for the committee to have a look and review of what they've been serving and give any feedback that you would like to. So that was it.
Thank you so much. While there aren't any action items on the agenda this evening, there is 1 on the addendum. So I would like to ask for a motion to move action item number 1 on the addendum. Ms. Santoro, and a second? Mr. Baker, and any discussions regarding facility and operations? Yeah.
This is sort of a combination, maybe new business and question. I think, we heard our student representative talk about, and I've heard this from multiple people, the lines the lunch lines at the high school cafeteria. So I know that it's a staffing issue at Machios. It's not our, I know that it's difficult for us, to have too much control on that, but I was wondering if there's an update or if there's something we can do. We can put that on the agenda for next month, or we can just do that now.
They have made progress in the last week, I would say,
Okay.
regarding staffing. They did execute a transfer from another facility to
Okay.
here, and then they're onboarding an additional person.
Okay.
So that's kind of where we are. Paninis are very popular with the kids.
Yeah.
So
the sandwich lines are very long, I hear.
yes, and that is accurate, and we're getting to a better place from a staffing perspective. They incurred a very late August resignation on top of being unable to fill somebody else. So, but in discussions with them, they've been open with us about doing some transfers to enhance.
Also, maybe this isn't your business, but I'd love to hear how the breakfast is going. I know it's early.
It is early. We need to do a better job of advertising it. We're not seeing the numbers that we would have hoped for. So Mia in my office is starting to develop some communication to that effect.
Okay.
And it's going to take multiple tiers of folks to really get the word out that we do have that as a possibility. So it's just okay, and we can do better.
Is anybody else for up and up? No? Okay, then roll call, please.
Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Ballard?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mrs. DeGrumpa?
Yes.
Ms. Gills?
Yes.
And Mrs. Brendan?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, and then, as is our new conduct that I almost skipped over the first time, we are going to ask if there are any items to be included in the future, old business for F&O, or new business for F&O. No? Okay. Then we will move on to the curriculum committee report, Ms. Cooper.
The curriculum committee met Tuesday, September 10th for 2.5 hours. All committee members attended, and we were joined by Dr. Brochel, Dr. Butler, Ms. Barna, Dr. Edgerton, and Mr. Catelli. We spent most of our meeting discussing the NJSLA results that Ms. Barna and Dr. Edgerton just presented and the access results that Mr. Catelli reviewed. I'd like to thank them for their detailed presentations tonight and to our committee. I just wanted to reiterate a few of the key findings that prompted some of the most extensive discussions in our meeting. First, we were happy to see a few of the key trends that the administrators reviewed. The fact that rates of proficiency in English and language arts increased with the time in district from 62% in grade 3 to 81% in grade 9 was highly encouraging. We were also very interested in the cohort-specific trends over time that Ms. Barna presented in spite of the lack of data in 2020 and 2021. For example, the proficiency rate in grade 3 in 2018 was 62% versus 65% in grade 4 in 2019, 74% in 2022 in grade 7, 80% in grade 8 in 2023, and 81% in grade 9. Committee did express concerns about the relatively high rate of students achieving level 1 or 2 in grade 3, which Ms. Barna attributed in part to a deficiency in phonics instruction, which has since been addressed with their new phonics curriculum. Regarding the NJSLA math results, we're really happy to see the 3% increase in math proficiency across the district since last year. Dr. Edgerton's analysis also clearly demonstrated the significant impact of COVID on math proficiency, but also showed that the district's math achievement has rebounded. In fact, the district-wide math scores are now exceeding pre-COVID levels. We're also excited to see that the improvements in math proficiency were seen in most subgroups, with striking improvements among our economically disadvantaged students. from 19.7% proficiency in 2023 to 30.4% proficiency in 2024. Dr. Edgerton indicated the NJSLA science test is relatively new and difficult to interpret, but there's definitely room for growth, particularly among 8th grade students, MLLs, and students with disabilities. Notably, the proficiency rate increased from 2.1% to 19.5% among economically disadvantaged students, although these cohorts are different. But Dr. Edgerton indicated that she would be collaborating with the Director of Special Services, the Director of Multi-Language Learning, and building administrators to conduct deep analyses of subgroup performances and support. The district will also be implementing changes to assessments, as she indicated today, that more effectively reflect the dimensions and areas of focus of the test, for example, analyzing and applying data. Overall, while the committee was happy to see improvements in proficiency in math and ELA, we recognize the continued growth in science in certain grades, subgroups, and content areas. One student group that requires greater focus is students with disabilities, which our new Student Services Committee will also be tackling. Mr. Catelli then reviewed the 2024 access results for multi-language learners in grades K through 12. I won't go into much detail into his presentation, but as he indicated, access testing measures students' academic English language skills in the areas of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Results of the access testing indicate that our MLLs are demonstrating significant growth in their English language skills and revealed some potential areas for improvement. Dr. Brochel then discussed the possibility of capturing kids' hearts in for 2 days of training for staff at Bedwell and the high school in the 2025-2026 school year. We'll continue to discuss the scheduling of these days in upcoming meetings. The next items on our agenda were field trips and professional development and school business requests. No concerns were raised by the committee regarding any of these requests. Dr. Butler then informed the group that we are continuing the RVCC Memorandum of Understanding for our dual enrollment multivariable calculus course, and that Ms. Barna and Mr. Catelli will be presenting at 2 upcoming National Council of Teachers conferences. Ms. Barna will be presenting on the language of leadership by sharing effective communication strategies leaders can use to engage subgroups and literacy initiatives, while Mr. Catelli will be sharing the findings of a pilot study conducted for his dissertation on how educators' conceptions of citizenships are shifting in response to growing youth civic participation in digital spaces. Congratulations to both of these amazing administrators. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Then at this time, I would like to ask for a motion to move action items number 1 through 4 on the agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, and a second? Ms. Ballard, and discussion for curriculum.
I do. I don't know if this would be in old business or now. Okay. So, throw it out.
Yeah, and then we'll figure it out.
I think what we've done with the lights, and I know it's not in curriculum, what Dr. Butler has, Dr. Brochel, Dr. Butler, all the doctors have done with the lights, the transparency, the engagement of the community, the openness with which it's been approached has been fantastic. What I would like to know is, where are the surveys from over 2 years ago for the health curriculum? Because we never saw those, and there were 2 of them conducted. So I'm very interested to see what those surveys yielded in regards to what parents were thinking.
I can research that and get back to you, and I apologize if I didn't.
It was before your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
So what would that be? I mean, old business or?
It could be a lot of things.
It could be old business
Kind of-
or new business.
Yeah.
Old business, okay.
I'll put it under old business.
Is there anybody that has anything else?
Wait, and we're also abstaining for ourselves, right?
Yes, I have.
Well, we do roll call.
Yeah, I have the letters.
Oh, you do? Okay. Is there anybody else that has anything for curriculum?
I'll reach out or drink. We're not doing this.
Yeah, I just want to finish if there's anything else for discussion. I just wanted to highlight from our meeting, Mr. Catelli spoke about it, those transliterated mom books that were an astounding thing to look at. When we talk about, meeting the needs of our Spanish-speaking students, to see that transliteration and to see how complex that spoken language is and what it looks like on paper, it was remarkable. The fact that that work is being undertaken is remarkable, but I think it really drove home for at least me how complex a situation this is. So that was extraordinarily helpful for me to see, and I just thought the books were beautiful and a wonderful thing for the kids. So I kind of just wanted to highlight that.
Well, now I thought of something else. You said that someone said they were raffled those books, so not every child got one of those mum books?
The group that we met at the community day on the 14th had a supply, but it was limited, so not every single student in the district received one. However, we are going to be meeting with them in a few weeks, so I'll kind of kick the tires on that.
Do you know like what one book costs?
I don't. And typically, you're talking about like somewhere between $10 and $20 for a book.
I wonder if they would be more expensive since
Yeah, we can kind of look at kind of their suppliers too, and certainly that would go through a process with curriculum committee and Dr. Butler.
Sweet Reads was also covered up, and they did also give out books, so every child did go home with a book.
And to Sam's point, I mean, the curriculum committee got to see these blue book books, so it might be valuable for the rest of the board to see them as well.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Because they were really,
It's something
really
to say.
interesting.
And just one other, I'm going to say it's current business just because it was reported out on tonight, and it is going to happen before our next meeting, the Combating Anti-Semitism Youth Summit. It sounds wonderful. I just had a question regarding, since it is student leaders participating in it, is there going to be a way to parlay this to the greater student
No,
population?
I had the same question as well.
There is, and internally we had the same question as well. We did work very closely with experts in the field, folks that not only work with youth, in this area, but serve in their synagogues, etc. And their recommendations did mirror what our students who have been involved in the planning have requested as well. Kind of starting with core groups and capillarying out. It's a difficult topic, even for adults. And there was some concern internally, and I don't disagree that it needs, the needle needs to be thread perfectly, and so there's an initiative to start with a large group, but to capillary out everywhere.
I do think this would be a good topic for the committee discussion as well. Yeah.
You'd be happy to? Yeah, we've done 3-4 months of work, on it. We'd be happy to kind of share in more detail also.
Thank you.
I just want to make one comment. Nicole, you did a great job summarizing kind of the committee's reaction to the presentation, and I just wanted to make sure, that we kind of reiterate the focus in particularly our students with disabilities, and just how critical that is, and the commitment, from the board's perspective in really wanting to focus on that, and then also forming this new committee, which will encompass that as well as other areas. But I also did want to point out that I appreciated in the presentations from the administration this evening, particularly in the area of students with special education, the partnering with the building administration to really, look to work together to form supports, particularly in those areas. So just.
Yeah, and that also was a question that was discussed in committee as to how we're going, in addition to a resource room and other services, how we are going to target and meet the needs of these students based on trends that we're seeing. So, a tremendous area of focus. Anybody else? Okay, roll call.
Mrs. Santoro?
Yes. Abstain from MM. Thank you.
Mr. Baker?
Yes, abstain, 2B.
Ms. Ballard?
Yes.
And abstain from 2C. Ms. Cooper?
Yes, and abstain from 2R.
Mrs. D. Rumprey?
Yes.
Ms. Gills?
Yes, abstain from 2Z.
And Mrs. Rowland?
Yes, abstain from 2Y.
Motion carries.
Okay, and even though we touched on it, we still are, after we vote, I'm always going to circle back to see if there is anything else that anyone wants to add to a future agenda for old business or new business. We don't want to leave the discussion without making sure everybody's concerns are being met. Nope, okay. Well, then we are going to move on to personnel.
So the Policy and Personnel Committee met on September 9th from 4 to about 5:15. All committee members were in attendance with the exchange of Mrs. Nathan as our alternate. In regards to personnel, we discussed the current agenda items. A short one.
Okay, thank you. So then, I would like to ask for a motion to move action items number 1 through 18 on the agenda and action item number 4B on the addendum.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Graham, and a second? Mr. Baker. Okay, and any discussion? Okay, then we can have a roll call.
Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Ballard?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mrs. D. Rumprey?
Yes.
Ms. Gills?
Yes.
And Mrs. Brenda?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, and again, moving into any additional items to be put on agendas for related to old or new business when it comes to personnel, just a quick little reminder that personnel, most things related to personnel have to be discussed in an executive level. We can't discuss specific members of personnel in public. However, if there are general personnel staffing, things like that related questions, that certainly is something that could be addressed. So is there anything that anybody would like to add for old or new business? Okay, then roll call, please.
No, we
Oh, we did roll call. I'm gonna get this, I swear. This is new, I'm moving my, it's all highlighted here. Okay, policy, please.
Okay, so I will touch briefly on our first readings that we went over on the 9th. As was stated previously, we did read in our special meeting last week the facility use policy into first reading. Just a few highlights related to that. So there were some updates to the overarching use of the facility policy, as well as we did insert language for the potential of moving forward with lights. We did pull that language mostly from the Board of Adjustment resolution, which was 7-23 that was signed May 5th of 2008 in regards to the section 6 and 7 of their light usage settlement at that point. And our hope was that we would be moving towards lights on until 8 p.m. during weeknights, and the potential for up to 16 events with lights on until 10 p.m. We also put in additional language for future boards and for the community to discuss the fact that we are not looking to make this a field that is rented out to non-community organizations and used all the time. We do want to be very conscious of our neighbors in the use of the lights and of the impact those events would have on the local community, and we are looking to partner in various ways to look at anything we can do in terms of not only the lighting piece, but also parking and everything else that would impact the neighborhood to try and make it as optimal a situation as we can if we do move forward with installing any lights. So that will be moving to further discussion tomorrow in committee, and then eventually into a second reading before we have anything approved. In terms of other policies, we talked about 2200, which was a curriculum content, which was reviewed. We talked about 3160, which is the physical examination of teachers and staff, as well as that regulation, as well as the physical examination of support staff and that regulation. There were a few minor grammatical changes and selection determinations that we discussed in that policy. We talked about 5200, which was attendance, 5337 about service animals, 5350, which is student suicide prevention, 8420, emergency and crisis situations, and 8461, which is firearm regulations, and 8467, firearms and weapons, as well as the regulation for that. 9181 in regards to volunteer coaches, and those were all reviewed without any major changes. We also discussed a potential new policy, which would be a drone use policy. The committee was very much in favor of implementing a drone policy and accepting the draft that came to us from a prior policy that was used in Delran, and we moved that to be formatted for first reading. There was, just anecdotally, right before the meeting, use of a drone at a football game by the other team. They were operating it, and administration did approach them because the current policy is that there's no drone usage on campus. So that was stopped. And drone usage, once a policy is in place, would be very much regulated and being approved by administration prior to use. We removed 2 policies that were no longer needed. So the remote public board meeting during a declared emergency, which hopefully we will not have any more. And 7231, which was gifts from vendors. Then we went on to review the current agenda items, which are mostly approval of these first readings.
Thank you very much. So then I would like to ask for a motion to approve action item number 1 on the agenda.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, and a second? Ms. Ballard? And any discussion regarding policy?
On the one on volunteer coaches, I remember, I don't see in this, but I remember reading one before that about compensation, or they shouldn't get compensation. Am I missing something? Do we have another one, or?
I think that's in a different policy.
Yeah.
I think it's in the,
Is there a name
it's
for
in
it?
the booster club policy.
Oh, booster club.
Where they specifically speak to the amount of money that a booster club could allocate to a volunteer.
Do you think you need anything in this one?
There's nothing that says you can.
It's just that
Yeah.
I know the word volunteer should mean non-compensation, but it's, maybe a good idea to make it clear in here, that,
I thought I read it was, I thought it was in there.
It's definitely in the booster
I
club
looked
policy.
through it, I'm just saying, since it's the first reading, when the group looks at it again, if you could, it would make sense that we've got one in,
Yeah.
the booster club, it ought to be the same.
We can include references to booster club, and kind of connect those 2 dots.
Anybody else?
All right, I'm confused again. Old business, new business,
Well, we're going to vote,
and then we're going to do
vote
that. Okay,
first, and then I will raise it. Okay, so if anybody doesn't have anything else, then I will ask for a roll call.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Ballard?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mrs. Seagram Craig?
Yes.
Ms. Gills?
Yes.
Mrs. St. Laurent?
Yes.
And Mrs. Brenda?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, so now they're listed separately on the, for old business and new business, but it's where I would ask now, after we do roll call, if there are any things for future agendas, and you can put it out there and we can figure out. It allows for old business and new business.
One, I like this new board process.
That's
I know I
awesome.
voted no, but I like it. I think it's very nice. Even though I'm a little bit confused still, but it's okay.
It is good to hear, and on a serious note, the board did discuss it at great length, and I think it's good to hear.
Okay, so I guess this, again, not sure, old business, new business. I would like to put this on for, I don't think it could be for the next meeting, but maybe the one in October for policy, to revisit 5756, specifically the point about keeping parents uninformed in relation to their children's current status. Because I know that's not coming from the state, that's not a requirement, a law, a statute. And I think we're just taking on too much. So I would like to add that on for I think the next meeting is tomorrow, so the October one.
Yeah, we won't have it for tomorrow, but I just want to point out for the board and then the committee also that it's not just policy 5756. It would also be the New Jersey law against discrimination and then guidance from the Department of Education. Those three documents serve as the roadmap. So, you know, in the event that the committee elects to take this up, it would be something that you would examine all three of those documents. So New Jersey law against discrimination, policy 5756, and then the New Jersey Department of Education guidance. So there really are three areas there that kind of comprise, you know, this piece. And I just want to make that clear, and we can sort of clarify the ask to include all three of them. That would best serve the committee's work in the event that they look at it.
Okay.
Good. Yep.
Is there anybody else?
So, I'm gonna call it old business for 1 second since it just happened, but because I thought I saw it under policy alert number 195 and 233, 91, 81, volunteer athletic coaches and co-curricular activities advisors and assistants. Number 8, volunteer athletic coaches and volunteer co-curricular activity advisors and assistants shall receive no financial remuneration from the board. And
So I'm sorry.
community,
So-
and it is in there.
So
It says
from the board
of
would
community.
mean, like, from the general fund, like, from payroll. So we don't generate a paycheck for a volunteer. But
Right.
But the Booster Club policy does memorialize a long-standing practice of providing some financial compensation that comes from sources that the board does not oversee. But that policy does limit how much a particular group or person could provide to a volunteer.
To a volunteer. Okay, and it is formatted weird, but it says the board and community in this policy. So
we would have
So I guess maybe to Bob's point.
It's not the community that's the title. It just says and, it's blank.
Oh, see how it's like that?
So then that's what confusing. So I think Dr. Bosch is right. You can make.
So we have to tie it
Yes.
together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else for future agendas? No? Okay. Then we are going to go into our first ever report of the Student Services Committee. Ms. Ballard.
So the first meeting was September 17th at 6:30 p.m. In attendance was Mrs. DeGrabrady, Mrs. Santoro, Mrs. Cooper, Mrs. Frenda, Dr. Brochel, and the Director of Student Services, Ms. Jamie Kransky. This was the first meeting of the Student Services Committee where the framework and goals of the committee were discussed. The committee, in conjunction with administration, has identified 5 major themes that we need to address. They include special education, climate and culture, school counseling matters, athletics, and diversity. In the area of special education, a self-study will be conducted that will include a profile of the department inclusive of IEPs and 504s. There will also be discussion of the status of student matters. From an operations standpoint, there will be focus on proactivity and tools to encourage both student and parent success. In the area of climate and culture, there will be school-based data, information collected and analyzed via self-study to inform the needs at each school and to create meaningful and appropriate norms and accountability. Critical to this work will be to ensure that we are hearing the voices of all students from across our various and diverse communities and levels of learners. Student and staff safety and security will be of paramount importance. Work in this area will be directed to ensure a holistically positive experience for our students that is inclusive, comfortable, and equitable. In the area of school counseling matters, a self-study will also be conducted with particular emphasis, excuse me, on transitional planning on a year-to-year basis, from school to school and for postgraduate needs and goals for all students. Can I ask you to
Sure,
read this?
please, I'd be happy to. Sorry. Sorry. All right, so I'm just gonna start off. In the area of school counseling, a study will also be conducted with particular emphasis on transitional planning on a year-to-year basis from school to school and for postgraduate needs and goals for all students. In the area of athletics, a self-study of the department will again be undertaken, and in so doing, student voice will be of paramount importance. We need to understand how they are experiencing our programs and if those programs are best meeting their needs. This will be done through broad-reaching data collection with an end goal of ensuring equity and safety for our student athletes. Finally, in the area of diversity, we will be aiming to improve connectedness across our student communities, and all stakeholders with an end goal of a greater degree of understanding, acceptance, and tolerance. These goals and the subsequent work will be refined as we gain a complete global and granular understanding via the self-studies for each of these areas. At our next meeting, Ms. Kransky and Dr. Groschel will be presenting to us a profile of our special education department, which will include IEPs as well as 504s. And then we discussed a few additional student matters, and that really concludes the report.
Okay, thank you. So there are no items to move for that particular committee, but if there are any points of discussion as it relates to the student services. Okay, and if there is anything for new business or old business for future agendas for that committee? Nope. Okay. Then we will move on to public comments. That's right. Thank you so much. So I am going to move right now that we passed our policy that regarding conduct of a board meeting, and the new policy that we adopted had board announcements preceding public comments. So I'm going to open it up for board announcements after reading this, and then we will end with public comments. So board announcement. The views and opinions that are may be expressed by individual members of the Somerset Village Board of Education during board announcements are solely those of the individual board members and do not reflect the views, opinions, policies, regulations, and/or positions of the Somerset Village Board of Education and/or any other individual members of the board. Does anybody have anything for board announcements? No? Okay.
I was thinking the same thing. I mean, we are,
I thought I saw pork roll on one of the bags.
We should actually, let me just pull out my paper something. We should mention the chef event that's on Saturday. It's not too late to buy tickets. So if you're interested, just Google chef, it will come up. That's how I did it. If I can do it, anyone can do it.
Then we are going to move into public comments. Public comments are welcome at this time on any topic. Please state your name and address. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. At 3 minutes, you will be interrupted and asked to pause to allow any other members of the public who would like to speak an opportunity to do so. An individual may return to the podium to complete their statement after everyone else has had an opportunity to speak for a total of 2 times at the podium. Please understand that our public forums are not structured as question and answer sessions, but are offered as opportunities to share your thoughts with the board. In instances where the board feels there is a misunderstanding or inaccuracy, the board president or superintendent may address the comment. In accordance with New Jersey statute, the board will not discuss matters regarding specific personnel. A reminder for all parties in attendance to remain respectful and that there should be no interaction between the speaker and the audience. No members of the audience should interfere with or interrupt the speaker's comment. Thank you in advance for your input. Again, I will direct you to Mrs. DeMarco's timer that is set for 3 minutes, and to please make sure that you're keeping track of that if possible, because at 3 minutes I will need to interrupt to allow others to come to the podium. So at this time, anybody that would like to take the podium.
Hello, my name is Luz Velaga, and I live 431 Claremont Road in Barnesville. Hi, my name is Allison. I will be speaking on behalf of my mother. My name is Luz Velaga, and I've been a Burnsville parent since my daughter started her high school back in 2007. Even before then, I have been a part of Burnsville school system since both my younger sister have graduated Burnsville Middle School and Burnsville High School. Never did I imagine myself having to be in front of the Board of Education talking about how today the school system that I have known to love for many years is failing my special need child, Anthony. I will keep this short to the point. In all my years, was not one to push back on what the school recommended to be good for any of my children. We've always had a great understanding, and it was not until recently that things have gone down. All I asked was for my son to have a better supervision at school, via an aide. I have tried to find middle ground with the school, and never in my life have I met with a director who keeps her foot in the sand. One who has told me that the reason the middle school no longer had a program for my son is because he was the only one that used the resource room. So she's been unwilling to meet me halfway when after 3 rounds of mediation, I have been nothing but been trying to meet her halfway. When a student in the high school is at, and maybe even below a kindergarten level, how could you sit there and accept that he does not need any more assistance? He has always had a 2-to-1 aide, and now is being asked that there is a 3-to-1 aide. My son is not able to come home and answer those dying questions every parent wishes to know of his day and how school was. One day, Anthony was hurt at school, and it was not until after we understood some words my son kept trying to tell my husband and I, we realized what happened. My son was hurt, and I had to guess what he kept trying to explain to me. After I asked the school 2 days later, I did get a response from the school that my son was pushed by someone by accident on the way to lunch. I, as a mother, am I supposed to hand in my child every day to a bigger school, such as the high school, and expect that everything will be okay for him? I am so disappointed at the school, as a mom, as a community, and as a human being. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
Allison Labrera, 10 Stephen Street. So I'm up here to support Anthony's family. He is in 7th grade, and he was told that he had to move to the middle school. It's not academically, socially appropriate for him to go from the middle school to the high school. It is not safe, nor is it in his best interest. There are other issues within the special ed community, and I'm really, really excited about this new committee, and I really, really hope that we start to address some of the issues. A lot of the issues are common sense, they have common sense solutions. For example, currently the 5th and 7th grade at the middle school have their literacy inclusion class as the last period. So that means that any child that is on any form of ADD medication, it has worn off by the end of the day. It also means that it is a double period, which is very difficult for a neurotypical child to sit through for that long and pay attention, let alone if you have if you struggle with reading. An example that I encountered this year, my son Jake is in 2nd grade and is on the spectrum. He goes to the resource room for ELA. Jake came home from his first day and said, "Mom, it's weird. I'm with all 1st graders." After speaking with other parents, I found out that there is a 2nd grade ELA class, but for some reason, he was put with the 1st graders along with one other 2nd grade boy. However, both Jake and this other 2nd grade boy are already reading. As a matter of fact, Jake did so well last year that we discussed moving him out of the resource room. But we decided to start with math first and then hopefully get to ELA this year. It is not academically or socially appropriate for either 2nd grader that are both reading to be in a class with 1st graders. Keep in mind that 1st graders are learning letter sounds and decoding strategies. Jake and the other child are completely reading. So when the teacher is teaching to the mean of the class, Jake and this other child will be bored.
not growing academically, and will start to act out. I called the school and spoke with this case manager. I was told that this is legal to have students of different grades in the same resource room. This is where my frustration lies. Although it is legal, it is not logical or what's in Jake's best interest. When I pressed further and asked what teachers were consulted about his placement, I found out that none were. We need to look at the whole student and their potential. We should not be checking off boxes and be like, oh, here we have an empty seat in the first grade ELA, so let's put him there. Rather, we should be looking at the whole student and what will help them achieve their full potential. I would rather the answer that it is legal, that the questions are, where is the child most likely to succeed? Which classes will the child grow the most academically and socially? These children are being stunted from the get-go by not being placed in the appropriate class.
I'm so sorry, Ms. Libera.
No, it's okay.
Is there anybody else that would like to make a comment at this time?
Good evening, Casey Quinn. I live on Old Army Road in Bernardsville. I know that at these meetings we don't usually discuss specific students. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Better? All right. Can we stop the timer since I'm not? Yep.
It helps to turn it on. Okay. We do a redo? Great, thank you. Tacey Quinn, Old Army Road in Burnsville. Given what, did it just cut out? No. Given what's happening with this situation we've heard about, I don't want to talk necessarily about specific students, but I want to ask, are we doing the best by our students? And not just in the legal sense, but in the whole picture. And I want to speak a little bit more to the whole picture situation here. We saw in the data tonight that we need to do better. I'm so happy to hear about the new committee, but I feel like this is quite urgent. Just a little background is my uncle had Down syndrome, and he was the heart of our family. My older son is named after him. So when my younger son, Teddy, came home from Miss Bruton's third grade class 5 years ago talking about his new friend Anthony, who it turns out had Down syndrome, which actually wasn't even clear when he first came and talked about his friend. It was amazing, and we've become wonderful friends. And this is the point of inclusive educational experiences. It's beneficial to Teddy, it's beneficial to Anthony, it's beneficial to that whole class. So to learn this year in 7th grade that suddenly his friend was at the high school without a one-to-one aid, it just was shocking. And it brings me here to ask you this question again. Are we doing the best by our students? So please improve this for all of our students. It impacts all of us.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that would like to come to the podium?
I'll just do real quick.
Okay. You have 3 minutes.
Sama Habibi, 8 Mosley Road, Gladstone. On Thursday, September 12th, I was reading my favorite local paper, the Bernardsville News. And I got to page 6, the obituaries, and this particular name just jumped out at me, Robert K. Fullergard. My heart sank as I read about our beloved Mr. Bob. Mr. Bob was a Somerset Hills bus driver for many years. He was so kind and sweet that he would send a postcard every August to his kids on his route to meet him at the bus stop on the first day of school. My son only had him for a year and a half as Mr. Bob retired to take care of a family member. The families on his route were heartbroken. We never had a bus driver like Mr. Bob again. He will forever be known as the best bus driver. I sent a text to local families who had the pleasure of knowing Mr. Bob, and here are some wonderful sentiments that they shared. He was such a lovely human being. He was a wonderful man, and we were so lucky to know him, and so were our children. Having him as a bus driver for so long was extra special. He was a true gentleman, and that is so true. He was truly special. We ran into him in ShopRite, and he congratulated me on being pregnant. Not me, this is someone else. My daughter told him before we had a chance to tell the family, and he was a true spirit of our community. So rest in peace, Mr. Bob.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that would like to seek the podium? No?
The thing with services is you're lucky if you've secured them in our school district. In our school district, it's unfortunately common to be denied assistance initially. The process begins with filing for an evaluation, only to wait a month and then receive a rejection. By the time you appeal and meet with the district, you've lost months of valuable support that the student urgently needs. While our schools are so fortunate to have amazing teachers, it's crucial to ensure who needs the help are approved for the services. Last year, Jake was in Jen Boer's resource room for math and ELA, and the growth we saw transformed his educational path. He's had the pleasure of working with Miss Arce, Mr. Sagan, Miss Roll, and Miss Stroman, and I'm sure more teachers this year, who have really helped him. I know of 3 other children in Jake's resource room that had a very, very similar experience. The problem is, it's getting that approval. It is getting the help that they need. When I spoke with an attorney the first time, when Jake was initially diagnosed 4 years ago, she told me, this does not surprise me about Somerset Hills. And that to me is heartbreaking, because when we chose this town to move into, part of the big reason that we moved here was for the schools. And unfortunately, right now, it is not helping a very significant part of our community. I just hope that we can stop gatekeeping students from accessing these services, and I really hope that the most important, urgent issue is that we get Anthony out of the high school. He needs to be with his friends that he's been with since day one. They're his friends, they're his peers, they look out for him, they have a bond, they have a relationship, and that matters to these kids. And it matters not only to Anthony, but it also matters to Anthony's friends. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we close, is there anyone else at this time? No? Okay, then can I get a motion to close public comments, please? Ms. Cooper, and a second? Ms. Santoro, thank you. And then I will need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, and a second? Mr. Grampo, and all in favor? Okay, thank you, everyone, and I just want to say before you go, I appreciate you being patient with the bumps and bruises along the way, instituting new agenda protocol, and we appreciate all of you this evening. Have a good night.